Hey, everybody. Cameron, Sam, welcome to the Wednesday Psalm Reflection. Lectionary Psalm. We don't call it Wednesday anymore, do we? We just call it the Lectionary Psalm Reflection.
Yeah, we can call it whatever we we want.
You know what, folks? We give you permission to listen on days besides Wednesday. So you're welcome for that. How's it going, guys?
Good. It's cold.
It is cold.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
cold, but I'm happy.
good. Sam, today I learned that one of the ways you're dealing with winter is by drinking so much water.
Yeah, I drink a ton of water. I'll show people really quick. So this is a 32-ounce clean canteen water container, and I drink four of these a day. I drink two during work, and then I go home and I drink another two.
That's
Good
a
for
lot.
you.
Cutoff is always around 8:30 p.m. Cut off. Otherwise, my nighttime gets a little disrupted.
That's why your skin is so smooth and perfect.
Keep going.
That's how.
It,
That's
it
how our conversation
hydrates.
started.
It hydrates all the parts of your body that people see.
Yeah, keep going.
Well, speaking of hydration, this is a bad segue because it has nothing to do with hydration. Psalm 50
Yes.
uh, is our lectionary psalm. Somebody want to read it for us?
Sure, I'll read it. Psalm 50, a psalm of Asaph. The mighty one, God, the Lord, speaks and summons the earth from the rising of the sun to the place where it sets. From Zion, perfect in beauty, God shines forth. Our God comes and will not be silent. A fire devours before him, and around him a tempest rages. He summons the heavens above and the earth, that he may judge his people. Gather to me, my consecrated ones, who made a covenant with me by sacrifice. And the heavens proclaim his righteousness, for God himself is judge.
Right on. So, Psalm 50, at least we have the first six verses today, is a psalm of Asaph, who was kind of like the great musician during David and Solomon's time. And um, this is a psalm that has a lot to do with the power and the primacy of God. So a lot of the language has God acting, and it has God acting before anybody else does anything. So God summons the earth in verse 1. From the rising of the sun in verse 1. And everything happens after God um, acts. God is doing all of his things before anybody else wakes up. And then this is lectionary wise, this is our psalm for this Sunday, which is Transfiguration Sunday. So we try to find transfiguration connections here. And that, I think, my guess for that connection is in verse 3, where it says, Our God comes and will not be silent. A fire devours before him, and around him a tempest rages. So as you have that kind of visual image of God, which is a kind of theophany, a kind of um, manifestation of God, it also makes us think about Jesus showing up on the mountain before Peter, James, and John. In this week is or this year is Mark chapter 9, and also that verse calls back to Exodus 19, which is when the Israelites showed up in Mount Sinai, having been relieved of their slavery, at least officially or on paper, and then showing up at Mount Sinai having no idea who they were or how they were supposed to act, and then God comes to them in this fantastic theophany. So, gentlemen, what do you make of what we got here today?
I'm surprised you didn't mention verse 2 as a lectionary psalm connection to this Sunday, Transfiguration Sunday, because it says, "From Zion, perfect in beauty, God shines forth." So I would include verse 2 into verse 3 and 4, which you mentioned, Stefan.
For sure.
That's it.
Shine, Jesus, shine. Bum,
Oh, by the
bum,
way,
bum. I always add the
if you're listening to this podcast or to this lectionary psalm reflection via podcast, then you can't see what's behind me, which is every Wednesday when we do this, I try to find a little phrase or a little sentence or something, a word that kind of summarizes the psalm. And this Wednesday, I chose Shine, Jesus, Shine, which has been in my head all week long. And in fact, one of the commentaries that I read this week said this Sunday, Transfiguration Sunday, might actually be the perfect Sunday to sing Shine, Jesus, Shine.
And you shared that opinion with Cameron, I believe. And then what I heard was just the most polite dismissal of your idea, which was, yeah, no, I don't think we're going to do that this week.
I don't know.
For which we thank you, Cameron.
Well, in my mind, the problem is that I hear Sweet Caroline in my mind. Shine, Jesus, shine, bum, bum. I just always want the bump, bump, because the bump, bump, bums are in the original Shine, Jesus, shine.
No,
I'll bring back later when I talk about my hymn for this week, because there is a correlation between those two ideas.
Wow.
Just so you know, musically.
You know,
talk about that later.
I want to hear about that, but I honestly, I don't feel like I can judge whether or not Shine, Jesus, Shine is actually a good song or not. Because there's a catchiness to it for sure, but that doesn't mean it's a good song. And for me, it's like that song came into like, I don't know, circulation or a lot of churches were singing it in the 90s. And it was one of the first like contemporary worship songs that our church was singing because we used to be an organ piano church growing up, and we started transitioning to like praise teams, and we sang a bunch of As the Deer was one of the songs we were singing, and Our God is an Awesome God was a song we sang, but Shine Jesus Shine was one of the first ones that was more than just like a catchy chorus. It had like verses and it had like claps. Do you remember that? Do you want me to sing it?
No, I don't think we have time for that.
I think we've kind of gone off the rails from Psalm 50 at this point, but I do as a disclaimer mean no harm to anyone who absolutely loves that song. Everyone's entitled to their taste and opinion.
I mean, it's still lodged in my head after all these years. So
yeah.
And I was thinking about it all this week with Transfiguration Sunday. But let me just say this about Psalm 50, getting back on the trails. So usually Psalms, and we talk about this a lot, is the Psalms give us words to pray. And in fact, just this past Sunday, I said that from the front. I said, you know, when we don't know what to pray, well, guess what? We have like 150 Psalms that give us words to pray. But Psalm 50 is unique in the sense that it's not so much us praying to God, it's God's words to us. So God is the one speaking in this psalm, which is a bit unique. Psalms don't usually go like that. So that's just something to pay attention to. And then right away at the very beginning, you get this, the mighty one, God, the Lord, which is another kind of unique kind of smashing together of different names for God, all said in one breath. So it's the Hebrew name El, Elohim, and then Yahweh. You get those three words. If I remember right, El is just the word for God, generic name. Elohim is God of hosts, if I remember right. And then Yahweh is God's personal revealed name at the burning bush. You might think of it as covenantal name given to a specific people. So they all get kind of lumped together right away. The mighty one, God, the Lord, which is interesting. And then the last thing I would say is at the very end, God summons forth his people to be judged, but do not fear because God is righteous and just.
Yeah, it's cool you said that, Sam, because I read a commentary that said there's actually 7 names for God in this psalm throughout the whole thing. And 3 of them are obviously in that first verse, and then there's 4 more interspersed. Another cool thing that I learned is that we sort of look at sort of God's, covenant often being sort of this between God and man, between God and Moses on the Mount Sinai. But what's awesome about this psalm is it's literally God and man, yes, but it's in the context of the entire universe. That God is like doing this profound thing and sort of shepherding his people and making promises, establishing sort of a law and a foundation for living in community with him and with each other. But he's doing it as the sun is setting and the the heavens are out, and sort of watching in and actively participating in this incredible sort of moment. So what I love about a lot of these psalms is that it's sort of like you have the micro level and the macro level happening at the exact same time, and it just makes sort of those what we might consider to be, I mean, it's no small moment for Moses to go up and commune with God and be told what to write down. However, it's like he still was like a person, so there's a normalcy to that. But in the greater context of scripture, it's so cool to see that literally like the heavens are a part of it too, and it just shows you how much God cares for his people.
So, how does this psalm help us pray, guys? If we're praying to this God, to the God of Psalm 50, with all of the names and the covenant God, the God of primacy, the God who is active before we awake, the God of transfiguration, the God of glory, how does it help us pray?
You just answered it.
That's what I was hoping you'd say. Boom. Now, what do you think?
It's a little all over the place, actually, the psalm. So, and we only get the first 6 verses. So sometimes the lectionary does that, where it gives you chunks, parts of psalms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to get the larger sense of what's going on in this psalm, but you get a sense that he shines forth, talks about his righteousness, his justice. And so the way I think about it is when you think about all that's wrong with the world, you can take all that to God in prayer and know that God is the one of truth, God shines forth, God is righteous, and God is just. Mm-hmm. And so you can ask him to act in the world in a way that is just and right and good. So I kind of see it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the middle of the psalm, I think, gives you a clue. And I almost read this sort of as a sarcastic statement, and correct me if I'm wrong, but God's sort of saying, do I eat the flesh of bulls and drink the blood of goats? Sacrifice thank offerings to God, fulfill your vows. Like when I read that, I originally was thinking God sort of like, come on, guys. Like we know this sort of sacrificial stuff is really more for you. And right. So you're obedient. Am I really gonna like eat that stuff and use that stuff that you make, And so I guess what I glean from that is that the idea of sort of a contrite heart and the idea of humbly bringing your gifts and your talents and serving God is and in bringing sort of, I mean, and there's so much language of sort of bringing an unblemished, pure heart, not sinless, because I know that's like a part of our humanity, but that's our deepest, greatest offering. So I think if we bring that spirit to prayer, I think that will have tremendous effect on our lives.
Mm-hmm. I would agree that I'd pick up on the glory theme pretty heavily in here, and how when we really see God for who he is, we probably just don't have so much to say, because he really is so powerful and so overwhelming, where he's like the verse you pointed out, which isn't in the lectionary text, but like am I going to eat the bull flesh and drink the blood? Like, listen, I'm bigger than all this. I'm bigger than your religious practice of coming to understand me. And it's like once we really behold the glory of God, we become like Peter, James, and John when they see Jesus transfigured on the mountain. They're just like, oh.
Yeah.
And all of these now this is my sermon for Sunday a little bit, but it's like all of these messianic ideas for who Jesus is and how he should show up. Like if you actually see him in his glory, you have nothing to say. You have no opinions to share. You're just kind of falling in line and like, wow, what is he going to do? What's he going to do with this? And you have less to say, and you're just kind of there to observe. What do you got for us musically, Cameron?
Yeah, so I mentioned Sweet Caroline, which we all know is sort of a pop tune. And however, if like, let's pretend that Shine Jesus Shine literally took the melody of Sweet Caroline and just basically inserted those sort of hymn verses onto that melody that everybody knows and everybody loves to sing. So there's a whole history in Psalms that is exactly that. Like literally, they would take sort of almost like a pub song, like a drinking, like raise your glasses, and to popularize it in the same way that we've seen churches like do this with rock and roll or whatever, so that people can remember the words and sing along. They would just basically insert sort of church lyrics onto those, and that's what they would sing. And this melody, which is Star of County Down, is a perfect example of that. So this is an Irish melody written a long time before, and it was actually became super popular in its day, and people started setting numerous psalm lyrics to the melody. And it's probably one of the reasons it's an incredibly awesome melody. And so many of you guys will recognize this. We actually sang this same one. This is one of the ones, Stefan, I think that you even said on stage that you really enjoyed that we did during Advent. Anyway, you'll recognize it, but they set Psalm 50 to this melody.
Cool.
So there is something, Sam, to be said about the sort of catchy tune, because it does sort of it can implant scripture, and it can implant worshipful lyrics into your heart and into your life just by being an earworm. And that's what pop music is. And this is just pop music, probably from the I don't even know when it was written, but yeah, mid 1800s or something.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right, there we are. Psalm 50, Transfiguration Sunday. We'll listen closely to your psalm. Thanks, Cameron. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, everybody.
Until next week.
The mighty God with power speaks, and all the world obeys. From dawn until the setting sun, God's wonder earth displays. The perfect beauty all around, from Zion's light shines forth, and stars across the firmament so brightly beam their worth. God comes not with a silent form, but riding on the winds. Before God's face, the raging storm its blast of thunder sends. Receive my heartfelt gift of thanks as honor to your might. Refresh my faith with each new day, protect me through the night. The heavens declare your justice, Lord, as endless as the sky. Against the taunts of disbelief, my faith with each new day. Protect me